Good evening. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on Tuesday, Yom Shlishi. Let's light up the darkness. Got a wonderful DAF for you today, a continuation of yesterday's Kiddushin 29. These together, really just some wonderful pieces of wisdom from the sages. Today it gets even better, and that's why I made it a key DAF. No time to waste. Let's be quick. Who's in the house? Yehud in South Carolina, Joe in the Inland Empire, Shandor in the Bronx, Bill in Mid-Missouri, Nancy in North Carolina, Bella in Florida, Paul in the Great Northwest, Sharon in New Jersey, David in Indiana, Jonathan in LA, Franco in Trieste, Italy, Ella says shalom, Marjorie in Georgia, Lucy in Minnesota. Welcome everybody. Our DAF is page 30 here in Tractate Kiddushin, the 20th volume of the Talmud. And we're continuing our discussion of Mishna number 8 here in chapter 1. And now we're talking about the obligations of a father to a son, among other things, to teach him Torah, to circumcise him, to redeem him, to marry him off, to teach him a trade, and some say to swim. And making distinctions between what a father's obligations are and what a mother's obligations are. We continue this discussion, pick it up near the bottom of page 29b. With regard to marriage, the Gemara relates Rav Chisda would praise Rav Hamnuna to Rav Huna by saying that he is a great man. Rav Huna said to him, when he comes to you, send him to me. I want to meet this great man. When Rav Hamnuna came before him, Rav Huna saw that he did not cover his head with a cloth, as Torah scholars did in that time and place. Rav Huna said to him, what is the reason that you do not cover your head with a cloth? And Rav Hamnuna said to him, the reason is that I am not married. It was not customary for unmarried men to cover their heads with such a cloth. So Rav Huna turned his face away from him in rebuke and said to him, see to it that you do not see my face until you marry. So the Gemara notes that Rav Huna conforms to a standard line of reasoning. As he says, if one is 20 years old and has not yet married a woman, all of his days will be in a state of sin concerning sexual matters. And the Gemara asks, can it enter your mind that he will be in a state of sin all of his days? Rather, say that this means the following. All of his days will be in a state of thoughts of sin, i.e. sexual thoughts. One who does not marry in his youth will become accustomed to thoughts of sexual matters, and the habit will remain with him the rest of his life. Rava said, and similarly the school of Rabbi Yishmael taught, until one reaches the age of 20 years, the Holy One, blessed be He, sits and waits for a man, saying, when will he marry a woman? Once he reaches the age of 20 and he has not married, the Holy One says, let his bones swell, i.e. he is cursed, and God is no longer concerned about him. Right? So the sages are saying, if you think about young men and the way that young men are, they need to channel that energy appropriately. They need to get married, right? So that their sexual energy can be directed toward their wife, and they won't be thinking the thoughts that young men think all the time. And Rav Chisda said, the fact that I am superior to my colleagues, right, in Torah learning as a Torah scholar, is because I married at the age of 16. And if I would have married at the age of 14, I would say to the Satan, an arrow in your eye, meaning I would not be afraid of the evil inclination at all. And Rava said to Rabbi Nassan Bar Ami, while your hand is still on your son's neck, meaning while you still have authority and control over your son, find him a wife. What is the appropriate age? From 16 until 22, and some say from 18 until 24. Now, in modern culture, this sounds very young, right? Sounds very young. But in the Orthodox world, it's when they do things. People get married at a very young age, 20, 21, 22, not uncommon at all. The Gemara notes that this is like a dispute between Tanaim. Now we're on page 30a. The sages of the Gemara have this dispute based on the verse, Proverbs 22, verse 6, train a child in the way that he should go. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nehemiah disagreed about the age in which the verse instructs the parent to educate his child. One said that the verse is referring to the ages from 16 until 22, and one said it is referring to the ages from 18 until 24. And the dispute concerning the correct age for marriage and the dispute about educating a child are the same. As, while a father still has a large measure of influence over his son, he must both teach him Torah and find him a wife. The Gemara continues its discussion pertaining to our Mishnah of a father's obligation to teach his son Torah. To what extent is a person obligated to teach his son Torah? What does this actually mean? So Rabbi Yehuda says that Shmuel says one should emulate the education of, for example, Zebulun ben Dan, a contemporary of Shmuel, whose father's father, his grandfather, taught him Bible, Mishna, Talmud, halachos, right, the laws that we live by, and Agadot, the more story-based types of teachings that we find here in the Talmud. And the Gemara raises an objection from a Baraisa. If a father taught his son Bible, he is not required to teach him Mishnah, commendable but not obligated. And Rava said in explanation of this Baraisa, Bible, this means the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, the 5 books of Moses, not the prophets or the writings which follow in the Hebrew Bible, meaning he is not required to teach him anything else, including Mishnah, what a father is really obligated to teach his son, according to Rava, is the Pentateuch, right? The Chumash, the 5 books of the Torah, the 5 books of Moses. So the Gemara answers, obviously the more you teach, the better. But in terms of what's obligated, you got to teach your son the Torah. So the Gemara answers that Shmuel's statement should be understood like this. One should teach his son, like Zebulun ben Dan was taught in certain aspects, but not like Zebulun ben Dan in other respects. One should teach his son like Zebulun ben Dan in that his father's father, his grandfather, taught him. But not like Zebulun ben Dan, as there he was taught Bible, Mishnah, Talmud, halachos, and agados. While here in this Baraisa, one is required to teach his son Bible alone. So the Gemara asks, but is one's grandfather, one's father's father, obligated to teach him Torah? But isn't it taught in a Baraisa that the verse, and you shall teach them to your sons, from Deuteronomy 11:19, this indicates, but not your son's sons. You're not obligated to teach your grandson, you're obligated to teach your son. And how do I realize, meaning how do I understand the meaning of the verse in Deuteronomy 4:9, but make them known to your sons and your sons' sons? And this verse serves to say to you that whoever teaches his son Torah, the verse ascribes him credit as though he taught him and his son and his son's son until the end of all generations. Right? In other words, you have made sure that the chain of learning that stretches all the way back to Mount Sinai, even beyond, back to our father Abraham, will continue down to your descendants. You didn't break the chain, right? You didn't break the chain. The Gemara answers that the Tana of this Baraisa stated his opinion in accordance with the opinion of that Tana, as it is taught in another Baraisa. From the verse, quote, and you shall teach them to your sons, I have derived only that you must teach your sons. From where do I derive that there is an obligation to teach your sons' sons, your grandsons? The verse states, but make them known to your sons and to your sons' sons. If so, what is the meaning when the verse states your sons in 11:19? which implies only sons? Well, this limitation is not to the exclusion of your grandsons, but rather you're obligated to teach your sons. You're not obligated to teach your daughters. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi says, anyone who teaches his son's son Torah, the verse ascribes him credit as though he received it from Mount Sinai. As it is stated, quote, but make them known to your sons and your sons' sons. And juxtaposed to it is the phrase in the verse, the day when you stood before the Lord your God in Horeb. And Horeb is Mount Sinai. And the Gemara relates, once Rabbi Chia bar Abba encountered Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi and saw that he had placed an inexpensive covering on his head and brought his child to the synagogue to study. So Rabbi Chia bar Abba said to him, what is the reason for all this fuss, as you are in such a hurry that you do not have time to dress yourself properly? And Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said to him, is it insignificant, that which is written, but make them known to your sons? And juxtaposed to it is the phrase in the verse that states, the day you stood before the Lord your God in Horeb? And the Gemara comments, from this moment onward, Rabbi Chia bar Abba would not taste meat, meaning he would not eat breakfast before he had read to his child and added to the child's studies from the day before. And similarly, Rabba bar Rav Huna would not taste meat before he had brought his child to the study hall. You know, this obligation, it's one to be taken very seriously. It's one thing to make sure your child receives a Torah education. Okay, so you send him, you know, to a day school, right? A Hebrew day school, or you send him to a Hebrew school like after school, or you hire a tutor, that kind of thing. It's good. It's very good. And especially if you yourself don't have that knowledge, maybe that's the only way you can do it. So fantastic. Do it. Invest in that Jewish education. But even better is if you can do it yourself. And if you have not learned enough where you feel like you can teach your children yourself, so learn so you can teach, or even learn together. And a book that actually our daughter encountered when she was at a Shabbos meal by one of her friend's parents, or she and her friend went to a Shabbos meal somewhere. I don't even remember who introduced it to our daughter, but then she brought it to us. And Nina, maybe you can find the link to that book. I can't even remember what it's called right now, like a Chas, something or other. But what it is, it's a book, a collection of dilemmas, right? So there's sort of halakhic, you know, Jewish legal dilemmas that were posed to major rabbis, you know, poskening rabbis who issue halakhic rulings. And so the way the book is formulated, it's like by your Shabbos table, by your dinner table, and it doesn't have to be Shabbos, but Shabbos is a great time for it. You can read to your children and to, you know, your guests or just your family, you know, a real life situation that happened. And it's often very difficult to say, what would the ruling be? Like, where do you come out on this? It's not clear, you know, what a person's obligations are. It leads to wonderful dinner conversation. And then, you know, after everybody discusses what their opinion is, which way the ruling should go, you know, then you read what the rabbi ruled in that situation. It's a series of books, and it's just a great way to learn together, not only with your children, with your friends, your family, your parents, your cousins. It's a great way to learn over a meal. We really enjoy those books. So, Nina, if you could put that link in the comments, that would be great. Okay. Where am I? Okay, Rav Safra says, in the name of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Hananiah. What is the meaning? Yeah. What is the meaning of that which is written, and you shall teach them diligently to your sons, from Deuteronomy 6:7. And this is from the Shema, from the text of the Shema. So do not read this word vishinantam as vishinantam with the root shin nun nun, which indicates repetition. Rather, read it as vishilashtam with the root shin lamed shin, related to the word three, shalosh. So this means that one must study, review, and study again, thereby dividing one's studies into 3 parts. There, Nina put the link to that book in the comments. Where am I? And sweetie, put it in the YouTube side as well, please, so people over there have it. Okay, so where am I? So in light of this statement, the sages said that a person should always divide his years into 3 parts, as follows: a third for Bible, a third for Mishna, and a third for Talmud. And so the Gemara asks, how can a person divide his life this way? Who knows the length of his life so that he could calculate how long a third will be? And the Gemara answers, no, it is necessary for one's days, i.e. one should divide each day of his life in this manner: a third for Bible, a third for Mishnah, a third for Talmud. So therefore, because they devoted so much time to the Bible, the first sages, the early sages, right, before there was Mishnah and Talmud that, were collected and redacted, they focused on the Bible. Right, so those first sages, those early sages, they were called soferim, those who count. Why? Because they would count all the letters in the Torah, as they would say that the letter Vav in the word gachon, belly, in Leviticus 11:42, this is the midpoint of the letters in a Torah scroll. And the words diligently inquired, darosh darash, in Leviticus 10:16, these are the midpoint of the words in a Torah scroll. And the verse that begins with, then he shall be shaven, Leviticus 13:33, this is the midpoint of the verses of the Torah. And similarly in the expression, the boar, B-O-A-R, the boar out of the wood, mi'ar, ravages it in Psalms 80 verse 14. So the ayin in the word wood, ya'ar, this is the midpoint of Psalms with regard to its number of letters. And the verse, but he, being full of compassion, forgives iniquity, Psalm 78 verse 38, this is the midpoint of the verses in the book of Psalms. Rav Yosef raises a dilemma. Does the vav of the word belly, gachon, belong to the first half or the second half of the Torah? And the sages said to him, let us bring a Torah scroll and count the letters. Didn't Rabbah bar bar Chana say, with regard to a different issue, they did not move from there until they brought a Torah scroll and counted the letters. Therefore, we can do the same. So Rav Yosef said to them, they were experts in the deficient and plain, P-L-E-N-E, which I must say I'm not familiar with that word, but in the deficient and plain forms of words, and therefore they could count the letters precisely. We, meaning the sages of the Gemara, who are, at a much higher level than we are, and even they said, we are not experts in this regard, and therefore we would be unable to resolve the question even if we were to count the letters. And similarly, Rav Yosef raises a dilemma. Does the midpoint of the verses in the Torah, which is, then he shall be shaven, belong to the first half or the second half? And Abaye said to him, even if we cannot count the letters, we can at least bring a Torah scroll to count the verses. But Rav Yosef explained, we are not experts about verses either. As when Rav Acha bar Ada came from Eretz Yisrael to Babylonia, he said, in the West, meaning in Eretz Yisrael, they divide this following verse into 3 separate verses. And the Lord said to Moses, behold, I come to you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you, and may also believe you forever. And Moses told the words of the people to the Lord. Exodus 19:9. Perhaps there are other verses that we do not know how to divide properly. Recall that the numbering of the 5 books of Moses, into chapter and verse, that was actually done quite a bit later. Now, the sages taught 5,888 verses are the verses in a Torah scroll. Psalms has 8 more verses than that, and Chronicles has 8 fewer verses than that. There's a lot of dispute about exactly how to make the count, and others say that there's a different number of verses. We'll leave that discussion for another day. The sages taught, the verse states, and you shall teach them diligently, veshinantam, Deuteronomy 6:7. Now the root shin nun nun of veshinantam should be understood as meaning sharp, i.e. the matters of Torah should be sharp and clear in your mouth, so that if a person asks you something, do not stutter in uncertainty and say an uncertain response to him. Rather, answer him immediately, as it is stated, now we're on page 30b, say to wisdom, you are my sister, and call understanding your kinswoman. Proverbs 7:4, which indicates that one should be as knowledgeable in the Torah as in the identity of his sister. And it states, bind them upon your fingers, you shall write them upon a tablet of your heart. Proverbs 7:3. And it states, as the arrows in the hand of a mighty man, so are the children of one's youth. Psalms 127 verse 4. And it states, sharp arrows of the mighty. Psalm 120 verse 4. And it states, your arrows are sharp, the peoples fall under you. Psalms 45 verse 6. And it states, happy is the man who has his quiver full of them. They shall not be put to shame when they speak with their enemies in the gate. In other words, we're using a metaphor, of arrows, kind of weapons of war, meaning that one's knowledge of Torah, is so sharp that he's ready. I mean, remember, these guys memorized the whole Torah. That's what they were saying. Like, you should have the whole Torah so well memorized that if somebody asks you about some verse, you can quote the verse right away and you can see how it ties to other verses. I mean, they had an extraordinary breadth of knowledge. The Gemara asks, what is the meaning of the phrase enemies in the gate with regard to Torah study? And Rabbi Chia bar Abba says, even a father and his son, or a rabbi and his student, who are engaged in Torah together, in one gate, right, in one place, become enemies with each other due to the intensity of their studies. But they do not leave there until they love each other, as it is stated in the verse discussing the places the Jewish people engaged in the battle in the wilderness. Quote, therefore it is said in the book of the wars of the Lord, Vahev in Besufa, right? And in the valleys of Arnon, Numbers 21:14. And the word Vahev is interpreted as related to the word for love, Ahava. Additionally, do not read this as in Besufa, rather read it as at its end, Besoifa, i.e. the conclusion of their dispute, they are beloved to each other, right? So people are discussing some, if you're learning Torah with a friend, with a colleague, with your teacher, with your son, etc., if you don't get to the place where you're arguing passionately about what the words mean, you're not going deep enough. Now, no matter how passionately you come to argue, of course, you remember that it's a very loving relationship that you have with your chavrusa, with your study partner. And so no matter how heated it gets, by the end, you're like, that was great, right? And you give each other a hug that you were able to learn at such a depth and with such passion. The sages taught, and you shall place, vesamtem, these words of mine in your hearts, Deuteronomy 11:18. Read this as though it is stated, samtam, a perfect elixir. And the Torah is compared to an elixir of life. Again, the Torah is compared to an elixir of life. There are many reasons for this, not the least of which is certainly that a Jew, right, is commanded to observe the commandments of the Torah, right? To follow the commandments is very difficult. Just to know how to live a Torah life is difficult. You can't just read the Torah and know what the commandments are. So you have to really study. You have to have the benefit of the commentaries of a rabbi in your life. You have to read up whenever you're not sure. Thank God we live in a time when you can Google almost all the basic halakhic questions and know which blessing you should say, what time you should say a prayer, etc. We all make mistakes. We're all negligent when we should be more diligent. It's very difficult. But the more we learn, the more we apply ourselves, the more we try, the more of a righteous, Torah life we can lead. It's an elixir of life because the life of this world is incandescent. It's a spark. It's an instant compared to the eternal life that will return to in the world of souls. And if your actions, all your deeds in this world, and you're rewarded for all the good you do and held accountable for all the good you didn't do, or all the mistakes you made, or all the sins you committed, etc. Okay, so you're held accountable. That means you're setting yourself up in this world for your portion in the world to come. And as I've said many times, right, it's not just there's heaven and everyone's in the same kind of paradise, drinking Mai Tais by the pool. There's an infinite number of levels in heaven, and where are you going to be in that hierarchy? What is going to be your starting position when you enter the life of the world to come, depends on what kind of a life you lead now. So of course you need to study Torah, you need to study halachos, you need to do all that learning so that you set yourself up. And if you're not a Jew, yeah, same thing, right? Same thing, because you're obligated in the Noahide commandments. There's only 7 of them, but they're really 7 categories, and there's so much to learn. And whether you're a Jew or not a Jew, learning Torah is going to be of enormous benefit to you in leading a righteous life and setting yourself up for eternal life. The Torah is an elixir of life. And there is a parable that illustrates this. A person hit his son with a strong blow and placed a bandage on his son's wound. And he said to him, "My son, as long as this bandage is on your wound and is healing you, eat what you enjoy and drink what you enjoy and bathe in either hot water or cold water, and you do not need to be afraid, as it will heal your wound. But if you take it off, the bandage, the wound will become gangrenous. You'll get gangrene. So too the Holy One, blessed be He, said to Israel, my children, I created an evil inclination, which is the wound, and I created Torah as its antidote. If you are engaged in Torah study, you will not be given over into the hand of the evil inclination. As it is stated, quote, if you do well, shall it not be lifted up? Genesis 4:7. One who engages in Torah study lifts himself above the evil inclination. And if you do not engage in Torah study, you are given over to its power. As it is stated, sin crouches at the door. Genesis 4:7. Moreover, all of the evil inclinations' deliberations will be concerning you, as it is stated in the same verse, and to you is its desire. The evil inclination wants to defeat you, wants to overcome you. According to this, elsewhere, we learned that the evil inclination would much prefer that you defeat it, but its job is to tempt you and lead you down the long road, the long and wrong road. And if you wish, you shall rule over it, as it is stated in the conclusion of the verse, but you may rule over it. For those who are familiar with John Steinbeck, East of Eden, long before I became a religious Jew, I was an English major in college, and I read East of Eden. And I was even then very moved, very struck by this discussion, right? East of Eden is about 2 brothers, and that's why it's called East of Eden, right? So like Cain and Abel, these brothers are compared to Cain and Abel. And, and so in the Bible, after, or I guess before, right? When Cain is very upset that Abel's offering to the Lord is accepted and his own offering is not, perhaps because Abel, who was a shepherd, gave the best of his flock, and Cain, who was a farmer, he gave from the produce, but maybe he didn't figure out which was the choicest part to give to God. That might be the reason. It was unclear why it was not accepted. But then Cain is very upset, and God says to him, why are you so crestfallen? If you do well, you will rise up. But if not, you won't, right? And that's where this verse comes from, as it's, translated here, right? If you do well, shall it not be lifted up? Sin crouches at the door, and to you is its desire, but you may rule over it. And in East of Eden, there's this wonderful discussion of biblical scholarship and basically Talmudic scholars and Christian scholars arguing over, I think the word is timshel. I still remember that, right? Timshel, that you may rule over it, right? Timshel. Ve'ata timshel bo, right? And it said in that book that, in certain denominations, non-Jewish religion, it says you will rule over it, right? You will rule over it. Like it's a promise. You don't have to worry, just believe the right things and you will rule over your evil inclination. And another translation is you shall rule over it. That you're ordered to rule over it, kind of removing your agency in a sense. But that the Hebrew scholars, right, the Talmudic scholars, translate that as you can rule over it, or here you may rule over it. It is in your power and it is up to you, right? It is up to you. You have to figure out what is right by studying and then organize your life and strengthen yourself and keep doing what you need to triumph over sin. But it's up to you. You've got the tools. God gives us the tools to rule over the evil inclination. So God gave us both the evil inclination and the tools to rule over it, the antidote. And what is the antidote? Torah, right? A life of Torah study, etc. The sages taught, so difficult is the evil inclination that even its creator calls it evil, as it is stated in Genesis 8:21, for the inclination of a man's heart is evil from his youth. I believe that's after the Noah story. Rav Yitzchak says a person's evil inclination renews itself to him every day, as it is stated, and that every inclination of the thoughts in his heart was only evil all day. Kol hayom, all day. Genesis 6:5. Kol hayom can also be understood as every day, not just all day, but every day. And Rabbi Shimon ben Levi says a person's inclination overpowers him every day and seeks to kill him. As it is stated, the wicked watches the righteous and seeks to slay him. Psalms 37:32. And if not for the fact that the Holy One, blessed be He, assists each person in battling his evil inclination, he could not overcome it. As it is stated, the Lord will not leave him in his hand. Psalm 37:33. Another big aspect of overcoming our evil inclination is praying to God for help. Like this, in the morning, God, please help me to make good choices today. That is such an effective prayer. I'm going to repeat that. In the morning, during your morning prayers or your morning meditation or whatever you do, say out loud with your lips, God, please strengthen me. Help me to make good choices today. And then when the difficult choices come up later in the day, you will have a greater power to make the right choice than if you didn't make that request in the morning. A sage from the school of Rabbi Yishmael taught, my son, if this wretched one, the evil inclination, encounters you, pull it into the study hall, i.e. go and study Torah. If it is a stone, it will melt. And if it is iron, it will break. As it is stated with regard to the Torah, is not my word like fire, says the Lord, and like a hammer that breaks the rock in pieces. Jeremiah 23:29. Just as the stone shatters a hammer, so too one can overcome his evil inclination, though it be strong as iron, through Torah study. With regard to the second part of this statement, if it is a stone, it will melt. This is as it is stated with regard to the Torah. Ho, everyone who thirsts, come for water. Isaiah 55:1. And it states, the water wears the stones. Job 14:19, indicating that water is stronger than stone. You need only look at the smooth stones in a riverbed to know that is so. Now, going back to the Baraisa on page 29a, which teaches that a father is commanded to marry his son to a woman. The Gemara asks, from where do we derive this matter? As it is written, take wives and bear sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons and give your daughters to men. Jeremiah 29:6. And the Gemara analyzes this verse. Granted, with regard to his son, this is in his power, i.e., he can instruct him to marry a woman. As a man is the active agent in a marriage, right? The man, asks the woman, the man betroths the woman, he initiates this. But with regard to his daughter, is this in his power? She must wait for a man to marry her. And the Gemara answers, this is what Jeremiah was saying to them in the aforementioned verse. Her father should give her something for her dowry, and he should dress and cover her with suitable clothing, so that men will leap to marry her. The Baraisa further states that a father is commanded to teach his son a trade. And the Gemara asks, from where do we derive this? Chizkiah said, as the verse states, enjoy life with the wife whom you love. Ecclesiastes 9:9. If this verse is interpreted literally, and it is referring to an actual woman, then one can derive as follows. Just as a father is obligated to marry his son to a woman, so too he is obligated to teach his son a trade, as indicated by the term life. And if the wife mentioned in this verse is allegorical, and it is the Torah, then one should explain the verse in the following manner. Just as he is obligated to teach his son Torah, so too he is obligated to teach him a trade. And the Baraisa adds, and some say that a father is also obligated to teach his son to swim in a river. And the Gemara asks, what is the reason for this? It is necessary for his life, i.e., this is potentially a life-saving skill. Common sense. The Gemara asks, what is the difference between the opinion of the first Tana and that of Rabbi Yehuda? Both state that a father must teach his son a trade. And the Gemara answers, there is a difference between them in a case where the father teaches his son to engage in business. According to the first Tana, this is sufficient, whereas Rabbi Yehuda maintains that the father must teach his son an actual trade. Not enough to teach him how to buy and sell and make money, he should actually teach him the kind of skill that is a learned skill with which one could always earn a living. The Mishna teaches with regard to all mitzvahs, all commandments of a father with regard to his son. Both men and women are obligated to perform them. And the Gemara inquires, what is the meaning of the expression, all mitzvahs of a father with regard to his son? If we say that this is referring to all of the mitzvahs that a father is required to perform for his son, are women obligated in these? But isn't it taught in a Baraisa? A father is obligated with regard to his son to circumcise him and to redeem him if he's a firstborn. And this indicates that his father, yes, he is obligated in these commandments, but his mother, no, she is not obligated to perform these commandments for her son. It's commendable, but she's not obligated. Rabbi Yehuda said that this is what the Mishnah is saying with regard to each mitzvah for the father that is incumbent upon the son to perform for his father. Both men and women are obligated in them. And the Gemara comments, we already learned this, as the sages taught in a Baraisa with regard to the verse. A man shall fear, tira'u, his mother and his father, Leviticus 19:3. I have derived only that a man is obligated in this commandment. From where do I derive that a woman is also obligated? When it says in the same verse, a man shall fear, tira'u, his mother and his father, employing the plural form of shall fear, right? Two or more shall fear. This indicates that there are two that are obligated here, both a man and a woman. If so, that both of them are obligated, what is the meaning when the verse states man? In the case of a man, it is in his power to perform this commandment. With regard to a woman, it is not always in her power to perform this mitzvah because she is under the authority of another person, i.e. her husband. As she is obligated to her husband to maintain her household, she is not always able to find time for her parents. Rav Idi Bar Avin says that Rav says, consequently, if a woman is divorced, then both of them, a daughter and a son, are equal with regard to honoring and fearing their father and mother. The sages taught that it is stated, quote, honor your father and your mother, Exodus 20:11. That's 10 Commandments. And it is stated, honor the Lord with your wealth, Proverbs 3:9. In this manner, the verse equates the honor of one's father and mother to the honor of the omnipresent, as the term honor is used in both cases. Similarly, it is stated, a man shall fear his mother and his father. And it is stated, you shall fear the Lord your God, and him you shall serve. And the verse equates the fear, in this case awe, of one's father and mother to the awe of the omnipresent. Likewise, it is stated, he who curses his mother or his father shall be put to death. And it is stated, whoever curses his God shall bear his sin. And the verse equates the blessing, in this case a euphemism for the cursing, of one's father and mother to the blessing of the omnipresent. But with regard to striking, i.e. with regard to the law that one who strikes his father or mother is liable to receive court-imposed capital punishment, it is certainly not possible to say the same concerning the Holy One, blessed be He, who is not corporeal and cannot be struck a blow. And so too, the equating of one's attitude toward his parents to his attitude toward God is a logical derivation, as the three of them are partners in His creation. Right? The three of them, meaning the mother, the father, and God, are the partners in the creation of a new human being. As the sages taught, there are three partners in the forming of a person: the Holy One, blessed be He, who provides the soul, and his father and his mother, who provide the body. When a person honors his father and mother, the Holy One, blessed be He, says, I ascribe credit to them as if I dwelt between them, and they honor me as well. When we act righteously, if it's not enough motivation to do it for yourself so that it's a reward in itself to lead a life of righteousness because you sleep well at night. If that's not enough motivation, lead a righteous life because you're setting yourself up for the world to come. If that's not enough motivation, because it honors your parents, right? This is the whole idea of the Yiddish word kavel, right? When we do the right thing, our parents kavel, they have pride, and it gives them nachas, right? Nachas, very interesting word. That's a Hebrew word that also used in Yiddish. Nachas we usually take as same like kaveling, like it just gives them pleasure, like pleasure and pride mixed together, right? That the children are mensches, right? The children are doing the right thing in the world, and that gives the parents nachas, right? I actually pray to God every day, strengthen me that I give you nachas, right? Not only my parents, but I want to give God nachas. And it makes sense, right? If you give nachas to your parents, you're giving nachas to the Lord. It just says so right there. But what's interesting about the word nachas, we take it like, pride and pleasure that the parents take in the deeds of their children. But what it actually means is ease, right? There's like nachas ruach, right? Ease of spirit. And so the idea is when the parents see their children behaving like mensches, right? Behaving uprightly in the world, it's like they can be at ease. They don't have to worry about the children. They've brought good people into the world. It was taught, I'm almost done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. It is taught in a baraisa that Rebbe says, it is revealed and known before the one who spoke and the world came into being that a son honors his mother more than he honors his father. Why would a son honor his mother more than he honors his father? Because she persuades him with many statements of encouragement and does not treat him harshly. Therefore, in the commandment of honor your father and your mother, the Holy One, blessed be He, preceded the mention of the honor due to one's father before mentioning the honor due to one's mother. The verse emphasizes the duty that does not come naturally, right? It's saying that it's just natural that sons, are just have a closer relationship with their moms and with their dads because their dads are so hard on them and the moms are much more encouraging. Therefore, the Torah says, honor your father and your mother, emphasizing that you need to develop that skill, honor your father, because it's not easy. Sometimes dads, they're so tough. so many times, I just want to hug my kids. I just want to, tell them everything's great. But I feel like as a dad, I got to tell them, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. This is what you got to do. Because, how many more days are they going to live in my house where I have the opportunity to tell them the right thing to do? And then Nina reminds me, yes, you got to communicate that to them. But, compliment sandwich. Say something really nice. Then the lesson, and then something really nice. And she's right. Similarly, it is revealed and known before the one who spoke and the world came into being that a son fears his father more than his mother, because his father teaches him Torah, and consequently he is strict with him. Therefore, the verse, a man shall fear his mother and his father, the Holy One, blessed be he, preceded the mention of fear the mother before mention of fear the father, right? Have awe of the mother. Again, because he naturally, fears or has more awe of the dad because the dad is strict with him, the Torah emphasizes have fear of your mother and your father to say to you, you have to develop that awe of your mom. She's really nice and sweet to you, but don't underestimate, the wisdom and learning and accomplishments of your mom just because she's so nice to you, Have awe of her the way you do of the dad. And that's where we're going to knock off for today. What a DAF, right? What a page. That was so many good lessons there. Okay, let's check some comments and questions on Kiddushin 30. Bill, clarification. We read earlier in this page that Bible, in this arrangement, Bible, Mishna, Talmud, Halachas Agudata, refers to the Torah and not the whole Tanakh. But in the division of Bible, Mishna, and Talmud for thirds of your day, does it still just mean the Torah, or does one include the prophets and writings? It seemed a little unclear. It was like they were debating it themselves. So I would say that, I'm not sure. Let's see where the halacha came out. If this was stated, hold on. The thirds. Okay. One should spend equal time learning Bible, Mishnah, and Talmud. The third, devoted to Bible, should be used to study all 24 books of the Bible. So there you go, Bill. The third, devoted to Mishnah, includes the oral Torah and commentaries on the Torah. And the third, devoted to Talmud, refers to understanding matters of Torah until one can infer the practical halacha, the practical law. The directive to apportion one's time in this manner is applicable to one at the initial stage of study. Once one becomes more learned, he is not required to devote equal time to the written law and the oral law. At that stage, occasional review of the written Torah is sufficient, and one should spend virtually all of his time in Talmud study. Some authorities maintain that the study of the Babylonian Talmud incorporates all three, right? As you see, the way we learn together, we're constantly referring to biblical verses, to Mishnahs, to Baraisas, to Gemaras, right? And so we are definitely engaged in all of that at once. So good question. Hopefully that answers. And Joe, plain, meaning, definition. Thank you very much. And Tom, does the Torah ever contain words in Aramaic? Not the 5 books of Moses. That's all in Hebrew. I believe, I'm no expert in this at all, but I'm pretty sure there is some Aramaic, like I think maybe in the book of Daniel. I'm not sure. I think there's a little bit of Aramaic somewhere in the Bible. I'm not sure exactly where. The Gemara is written in Aramaic. In the Mishnah is in Hebrew, but occasionally includes a few Aramaic words. Somebody I'm sure is more expert than this in our class and can put in a comment. I'm pretty sure that there are a couple places in the Bible where you find a little bit of Aramaic. Not a lot, but some. I don't remember offhand. That's what I've got for us today. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, Wednesday at the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific. Have a great night.